Hey you guys, welcome back to the channel. It's me, B. Riley, and today we're going to take our Squier Sonic Mustang a little bit further down the road and hopefully get it towards complete. We're going to try something a little bit different with the pickguard. I've been kind of getting in love with changing everything lately, and also I'm going to show you guys how we aged the fretboard a little bit and how we tried something a little bit different on the neck plate. Instead of relicking it, kind of taking it in a little bit more of a bejeweled direction. But before we get too far into the video, I just want to give you guys a heads up that this guitar is kind of getting all this special treatment, and the reason that it is that would not be typical of the channel during the year is that this is going to be actually a giveaway guitar. I'm going to send this off to somebody who needs it. Now, I don't know how we're going to get that wired yet. I've never done that before. The channel's still pretty new, and this is the first time we're really, stepping into the holiday season. Taking it a little bit more seriously. But anyway, that explains that. That's why we're going to town on this and making it a little bit more fancy. And the reason is because, this thing isn't totally expensive, which, like we were talking about in the last video, gives us the liberty to really, be a bit more experimental in the stylistic direction of the guitar. But at the same time, it's just fun. And for the holiday season, somebody gets something that's had a bit of attention paid to it, and it's been made something a little bit different. And hopefully, for them, the state of the guitar is simply the jumping off point, because all of this is designed to not only look aged, but to continue aging. This is kind of just the beginning of it. It's like you've taken the story up to a certain point, and now you're allowing the guitar to kind of tell that story from there on out. Anyway, that is why we're taking all this extra time and doing all these, little strange and new details, at least stuff that I haven't tried before, and hopefully you guys are enjoying it. Anyway, more details to come on how to enter to get this for the holiday season, but I will post up details on that in the coming week. Okay, since we did most of the body stuff last episode, let's go ahead and start off with the neck, since that's going to be the heavy lifting. Now, you can already see by the vid that I had tried to actually contaminate some of the fretboard, but it didn't work. I had to actually go ahead and scuff the fretboard down to open timber and then reshoot it with some of the Watco clear coat that I got from Home Depot. The reason is because the original finish is more of a sealant, and as you wear it away, instead of getting clearly defined lines, you get little peaks in the grain and valleys because they really didn't fine sand it before finishing it. So this is us wet sanding it after we've laid out some new clear coat. I shot straight over the frets because I'm going to clean them up later on with a buffing wheel, and now essentially we're putting our wear patterns into the fretboard, and that brings us up to the current moment. The bits that I find are working really, really well are the very soft, almost Scotch-Brite style bits that you use on the head, where you can kind of heat up the finish a little bit and then jab it quickly, and it'll break away and it'll look very, very 1973. Now, one of the great things about the finishes on these necks is that other than the fretboard being kind of under-sanded, is that the back and the headstock and the front of the headstock are all so solid enough that you could essentially wet sand them with 1500 and then up to 2000 and then up to 3000 wet dry, and then you can buff it back. And you can take it to a varying degree, but just like the fretboard, there's only so far you can take it because they really didn't fine sand it. But it does give you a great gloss that will match the front of the guitar, and it's comfortable to play. And it doesn't cost you anything than a couple pieces of sandpaper and some Meguiar's automotive polish, which ain't too bad. Okay, now something that I see quite frequently with a lot of relic guitars is I see really great work going into it by people who are either just getting into it and doing a great job, or somebody who's got a lot of experience with it and they really know their way around. But the only thing is that it is always taken to that point, but then the contamination is kind of underwhelming, or it's not severe enough, or it's not accurate enough. What I find is kind of a two-pronged approach is the most beneficial. Starting off with pencil graphite and allowing it to fill in the big pores, because it's basically particulate. It's not going to be able to really penetrate deep. And then using the stain like this and allowing it to sink in. Because when we're wet sanding finish and all that sort of stuff, moisture takes place in the grain and it doesn't allow the stain to fully sink in. So coming back and hitting it 2 or 3 different times until you find the degree of contamination that you feel is most convincing and looks best is your best bet. Big tip here when it comes to aging stuff or contaminating new brakes is just kind of look at how you play and see how that would wear the finish. That's like a really big part of this. Now, there are a lot of different methodologies in which to put your impressions into the actual fretboard area. I believe that bouncing between a polishing wheel and that small abrasive wheel gives you a more clearly defined line, and it gives you a little bit more of the oval shape that leans a little left towards the front of the frets. Because the thing is that you don't want perfect ovals and you don't want perfect teardrop impressions. It's the irregularity of the shapes. It's the eccentricity and the difference of the impressions that makes it most believable. Because for every player, there's a different way to play, there's a different strength, there's a different weakness, and all of those different variables come in and give us those very unique footprint patterns on the fretboard. So you want to kind of create your deepest spot just left of center in the center of the frets. You don't want it to be a perfect oval, and you most certainly don't want any square edges. You want the irregularity of wear. Okay, so here's the thing. We've got our checking, and you can see that we've progressed the aging on the shoulder a little bit here, using a mixture of both graphite and stain, and kind of coming back and doing one on one day and one on the other. And the reason is because, you know, the wood still has some moisture content from both sanding and just its natural content. It hasn't been dried out, it's been sealed up in poly. So you want to kind of open the grain and let it breathe a little. Once it's had a chance for the grain to kind of, you know, get a little bit drier, it'll be a little bit more willing to accept stain, not just in the pores where the graphite really hits hard, but also in the actual fibrous material next to it, you know, and it gives it more of an even distinction. Also, this is really handy because if you look right here, what the stain does when it really starts to dig in is start to bloom underneath where the finish is giving up, which is much more authentic looking in a relic. You know, you want to see that the contamination is aiding the degradation of the paint, not that deliberate degradation of the paint has allowed that to start to age. I've seen a lot of Gibsons with really heavy checking that are almost immaculate otherwise, but fenders just never seem to get, you know, that red carpet treatment. And given the, you know, extreme amount of wear that we've got here that would be consistent with somebody wearing long sleeves, maybe denim long sleeves will do that to paint in a very short amount of time because it's much more abrasive than we realize, then we would have knocks over here. So what you want to do is you want to take a dull blade, definitely not a sharp one, and you don't want to cut the finish because you don't want to lift the grain. You simply want to lean on it until the nitro fractures slightly, and then allow the paint to crumble in front of the blade. What I like to do if you're making a longer hit is instead of going out that way where you can lose control of the blade, you create a notch and then create a series of notches behind it. And this gives you a really good control over the size. And then what you can do is you can just drag your blade and it'll actually pop these little sections off. You get a good knock like that. And this is also useful too because, you know, when you do have something drop, you might not always have an impression, but it's going to skitter. And you don't want too much. You want just enough. Now that we've got those, let's go ahead and see if we can make them a little bit more convincing. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually hit them with polish. What this is going to do is it's going to round off the break. So where the damage is initiated and the blade dug in, you'll have this subtle downturn into the area where the finish is no longer. This means that if you get somebody looking at it really, really up close, they'll see those rounded edges and they'll assume that that break must simply be, you know, 20 or 30 years old, the amount that it would require for those edges to become rounded by natural handling. Now we're going to have to put pencil graphite all over this all over again because we're cleaning a lot of it off. But this is kind of how you get it. You know, when it comes to aging something like this, it's a bit like cooking Italian food. There is no recipe. You know, the recipe's in your head. And how you figure out that it works for that evening is that you taste it as you go along. When we're relicking a guitar, every single one of them is different. Every finish is a different thickness, a different density, was shot in different conditions, and it creates all of these different variables that you can't control. So essentially what happens is as you're checking on it, going on along, and kind of slowly moving through the bumping process and moving up to a point of comfortability where you like it, you can always go further later, is kind of like, you know, feeling out the finish. If you were to apply one generalized process over every guitar, you would have very, very varied results. Some of them great and some of them not great. Application added way too much. Perfect. Well, when you're relicking a guitar, sometimes you're going to get that inadvertent realism, like when the camera falls out of its mounting and lands corner down on the guitar. Okay, so that's going to be our video for this week. As I always say, when it comes to relicking guitars, things like that, you know, there's more than one way to do it right. So if you're doing it a different way and it's giving you results that are really favorable, then go ahead and share those in the comment section. Other than that, like I had said earlier in the video, please keep an ear out. Within the next week, we're going to be talking about how to enter to win this guitar. But that aside, and that, you know, pushed out of the way, I just really like the idea of, you know, being able to put something together for somebody's holiday, you know. When I was a kid, that was just like the thing, you know, if you could get a guitar for Christmas, then you really had life wired. Jameson, relax. So Jameson's being noisy. I really enjoy the idea of somebody being able to get a guitar this holiday. And this thing's pretty rad. I'm really coming around on it. At first I was unsure, you know, but after it all got put together, I think it really landed in the right way. You know, that's the thing with these, is it's not about necessarily pushing the body really far and the degradation. It's more along the lines of just creating a guitar that has an overall concept, like it looks like it all got there together. That being said, you know, when you see a guitar body that's been aged and then the neck is, you know, this frosty white maple that is absolutely unmarred, it does tend to break immersion. So the big thing with this guitar was necessarily not, you know, going over the top and doing a really extreme job or a really intricate job in any one part of the guitar. I think it came together just because conceptually it kind of came together. Everything kind of just looks a little bit more gently worn. I like the competition nod. You know, it couldn't do stripes on this. It would be confusing because there's no bevels on this, so it's kind of at odds with itself. There's no cutaways. But I thought that was kind of a nice little homage. So I like that we got to kind of throw something in there, and obviously I'm just, you know, starting to get into doing like more like light sculpting in the pickguard and something like that. Something that's free to do. You can do it yourself with a pair of basic files and some sandpaper in, you know, an hour or two. And it's just kind of nice. And if it goes wrong and you don't like the vibe of it, then, you know, 10 bucks, take the pickguard out and swap it out. Now, last but not least on this is the part of this guitar that I really, really like, and I hope that whoever gets it takes it in this direction, which is that these Sonic Mustangs have a huge swimming pool route underneath the pickguard. So as simple as it is to get the pickguard and the electronics out of this, you could have two totally different electronic setups with this. Two different pickguards, two different plates, swap them out in 5 minutes, go from humbuckers to single coils. You could do something with Soap Bar P90s or something along those lines, and it just makes it a little bit more versatile. I like that the, you know, swimming pool route isn't maybe the most attractive thing to find on a 70s Strat if it's been routed out and really hollowed out. But on this, it does speak to the utilitarian, you know, intentionality of the build, of the design. And it comes right back to square one where we were when we first reviewed this thing. This is just a rad guitar. But at least now, it's got a little bit of a different look. It doesn't look like something fresh off the shelf. It's got a little bit of a different style to it. And, you know, hopefully we can make somebody's holiday a little bit brighter. Anyway, I will see you guys next week. So stay tuned for the next couple of days where we will talk about the details on how to enter to win this guitar. And I hope you have the most beautiful of weeks, and I will see you guys next time.